Yonder music.
Hey y'all, what's happening? What's happening? Welcome to Storytime with Julian. I am your host, Julian Long, and it is my pleasure to read to you tonight. Tonight we are going to read from this is an author that we are familiar with here on Storytime with Julian. We've read from him before. This author is Victor Lavalle. Now, yesterday was Victor Lavalle's birthday, and so we're all about celebrating different authors, and you will see frequently if you follow us on social media, you'll see us post up a birthday message. And if an author's birthday falls on a Tuesday or a Thursday, you can bet for sure we're going to read their work. If it falls close to it, there's about a 50-50 shot. And it was crazy because Monday was Langston Hughes's birthday. So Tuesday, wait, is that right? Was Monday his birthday or was Tuesday his birthday? Anyway, Tuesday we read Langston Hughes because it was time to read Langston Hughes. And Wednesday was, that's right, Tuesday was Langston Hughes' birthday, so we read Langston Hughes. Wednesday was Victor Lavalle's birthday. And so I hit him up and I was looking into some of his work. Now, like I was saying in the pre-read, for those of you all who are long-term followers of Storytime with Julian, you will know that we read a couple of stories from Slapboxing with Jesus, which is his collection of short stories. Now, short fiction is the preferred. It's what we prefer here at Storytime. We like to read short stories. I want y'all to get the full experience in, sort of a bite-sized nugget. But on occasion, we will read longer or extended pieces. I've presented my own piece, The Autopsy of Rare Sean Brown, which is serialized. And so that went over a period of episodes. We've read a number of stories that come from the collection called Gumbo. And those stories are often excerpted from larger works like The Women of Brewster Place. We've read excerpts of Thieves Paradise, which is a Walter Mosley story. I'm sorry, that's Eric Jerome Dickey. So we have read like chunks that sort of are their own story that are sort of pulled out. And so that kind of expands the territory. And I thought, you know what? I get it. The stories from Slapboxing with Jesus did not necessarily go over incredibly well. Some people, there's absolutely good reasons to have taken issues with the language and with the characterization of the men there. It was rough. It was rough. And it's one thing to say that, those were men of a different time because it was the 70s and the 80s. And I think there's some truth to that. But I think some things are just rough for people anyhow. That being said, the author himself has a body of work that is so much broader than that. So I wanted to explore it. And one of the things that I found out was this cat writes horror, which I did not know. I did not know that Victor Lavalle was actually, in some circles, just flat out considered a horror writer. And so to look into him, one of the things that I found, and for those of you who saw the post about his birthday, you'll see it. Victor Lavalle looks for the monsters. He looks for, and in fact, celebrates the monsters. And so now the monsters, I don't know what calling hogs at this time means. I don't know what that means. I'm very confused. At any rate, I'm looking at the comments and I have no idea. But anyway, um, I I'm saying that he looks for the monsters and he celebrates the monsters. And so then the question becomes, how do the monsters show up? He has this really interesting quote where he's like, he just says flat out, "Give me the monsters." Like things in life don't always make sense. So give me the monsters because things don't always, stories don't always end with a tight little bow. We can't rationalize everything to make it nice and neat and to make it the way we want. But the monsters always make sense. And it's a dark, maybe macabre point of view, but there's a certain truth to it because monsters are not about trying to make sense of anything. So their presence in a story, destructive as it is, however the monsters show up, They make sense in and of themselves. There is in sociology and also in psychology a concept called monster creation, where when we other someone, where we say, you're not like me, and then we begin to add layers to the distance and the difference between them and us. And when we make them the source of the problem, we make them the monsters. It becomes monster creation. You see this a lot in politics. Right-wing politicians create the boogeyman of the wild-eyed liberal extremists who are out here. They're going to try and turn your kids all gay, and they want to kill half the people on the planet because they're environmentalists, according to Ted Cruz, and they want to erase all concepts of reality. And you see the same thing with the left wing talking about right wing. That there are all these. I mean, you know what? I'm just going to say I struggle with it because I probably participate in that monster creation because they make it really, really easy. But every conservative is not out here being lawless and looking to oppress and crush. They have different points of view, but this idea of monster creation persists. We make monsters of what we either vehemently disagree with or don't understand. I think that Victor Lavalle, for his part, in his works, from what I have been reading and what I've been coming up with, deals both with the literal, phantasmagorical idea of monsters, and he also deals with these these concepts that other us, that make us different, that create monsters in our mind or in our world. So we are going to read an excerpt from the first couple of chapters of his book, The Big Machine. No, I'm sorry, not the. There's no the. It's like when people say the Batman. It's not. There's no the. It's from his book, Big Machine. Now, Big Machine is a story of a former junkie. I don't want to say that, former addict, I think is more appropriate way to say it. A survivor of a suicide cult who is just kind of whiling away the rest of his life. He's escaped this cult and now he's just kind of making do on the make do. Let me read you the summary. Ricky Rice was as good as invisible, a middling hustler, recovering dope fiend, and traumatized cult survivor running out the string of his life as a porter at a bus depot in Utica, New York. One day, after a letter appears, one day, a letter appears summoning him to the frozen woods of Vermont. There, Ricky is inducted into a band of paranormal investigators comprised of former addicts and petty criminals, all of whom at some point in their wasted lives heard the voice. A mysterious murmur on the wind, a disembodied shout, or a whisper in an empty room that may or may not be from God. Now, this story, according to those who have reviewed it, deals a lot with race. It deals with faith. It deals with doubt and questioning. It deals with belief systems. And because it deals in the paranormal, there may be an expectation that there are some actual literal monsters too. So I'm going to take a minute and greet some of y'all and see who we've got in the room. And please do me a couple of solids before we get right into it. I know I've already been yammering for about 10 minutes, but hear me out here. Mimi Brown, good to see you. Angel Monique, Kitty Foxy, good to see you. Saniqua, haven't seen you in a long time, so good to see you back. Tawana Bryant, I'm happy to see you. Homie Lou, good to see you too. I love it when you announce yourselves and let me know that you're here. It's good and cute to see the numbers pop up on the screen, but it's even better when I get to see the names and comments. And as you have thoughts about the stuff that we're reading, please go ahead and post your comments. That's exciting for me to see. It's good for me to see. I see Alicia Evans is here with her vodka and blanket. You better go ahead and get relaxed. I like it. I love it. One other thing that I want to ask, actually, two pieces of housekeeping. One, right now, if you love what we do here, you like Storytime with Julian, you get something out of this, invite a friend, tag a friend right now in this thread, if you're on Facebook especially, and let them know. And for those of you who are viewing for the first time from my page, because I haven't broadcast this show on my page in a while. Usually I broadcast it through Storytime with Julian, but I'm also, I pulled it off of Twitch tonight and decided to show it from my page because I want more people to see it. I want those of you all who, you kick it with me, you like my posts. This is the thing that I do. Okay. This is the thing that, other than caring for my mother and the writing that I do, this show is the most important thing to me. This is what I do. And this is me. So I want you to be a part of it. I want you to enjoy it. I want you to be down with it with me. All right. Now, I just had a weird thing with my camera, so I just had to flick that back on. Good to see Terry Meredith in the building, present and sharing. So I want you all to share it. I want you to invite a friend. I want you to do me another solid. And just throughout the week, when you're talking about things that you get down with, what you're going to be doing next week, what you're into, let people know that Storytime with Julian is one of those things so that we can help grow this. All right. Now, um, the other bit of housekeeping. If you are not following us on YouTube, I need you to go to YouTube. I would love to see more red triangles than I do blue Fs. Go to YouTube, like the channel, subscribe the channel, like the videos. You can see the videos from past weeks. They live on YouTube even after we take them off of Facebook. So I want you to be able to see the back catalog because we are up to 77 episodes now. Now, you can't see all of 77 on YouTube. I have to upload some of the older ones, which I will be doing soon. But this is where you can find us on social. Please make sure that you check us out on YouTube and just go ahead and become a subscriber because a lot of the things that we're going to be doing in terms of contest, in terms of giveaways, in terms of special content, they're going to be happening on YouTube and they're not going to be happening on Facebook. And I don't want you to miss out. All right. Um, and that with that, let's see, I see a couple of questions. First of all, Alicia, Angel, thank you so much. Yafa, I see you inviting people. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Judy Lee wants to know if it would be too weird to invite the other Julian. No, there's a lot of people named Julian. Go on and bring the other Julian. It'll be story time with Julian, and Julian can be with Julian, and it's fine with me. All right, we're gonna go ahead and get started and get into the story. Because we've just got, now that I've spent 15 minutes with all the pre-mumble, we've got just about an hour to kind of get through and see how we feel about this offering from Big Machine by Victor Lavalle. Don't look for dignity in public bathrooms. The most you'll find is, hold up, rewind. Section 1 is called We Like Monsters. So, to my point. Don't look for dignity in public bathrooms. The most you'll find is privacy and sticky floors. But when my boss gave me the glossy envelope, the bathroom was the first place I ran. What can I say? Lurking in toilets was my job. I was a janitor at Union Station in Utica, New York, specifically contracted through Trailways to keep their little ticket booth and nearby bathroom clean. I'd done the same job in other upstate towns, places so small their whole bus stations could have fit inside Union Station's marbled hall. A year in Kingston, 6 months in Elmira, then Troy. Quit one and find the next. Sometimes I told them I was leaving. Other times I just disappeared. When I got the envelope, I went to the bathroom and shut the door. I couldn't lock it from the inside, so I did the next best thing and pulled my cleaning cart in front of the door to block the way. My boss was a woman, but if the floors in front of Trailway's booth weren't shining, she'd launch into the men's room with a fury. She had hopes of a promotion. But even with the cart in the way, I felt exposed. I went into the third stall, the last stall, so I could have my peace. Soon as I opened the door, though, I shut it again. Good God! Me and my eyes agreed that the second stall would be better. I don't know what to say about the hygiene of the male species. I can understand how a person misses the hole when he's standing, but how does he miss the hole while he's sitting down? My goodness, my goodness. So it was decided. I entered stall number 2. The front of the envelope had my name written by hand and nothing else. No return address in the corner or on the back, and no mailing address. My boss just said the creamy yellow envelope had been sitting on her desk when she came in that morning, propped against the green clay pen holder her son made in art class. I held the envelope up to the fluorescent ceiling lights and saw 2 different papers inside. One a long rectangle and the other a small square. I tapped the envelope against my palm and tore the top half slowly. I blew into the open envelope, turned it upside down, and dropped both pieces of paper into my hand. Ricky Rice! I heard my name and the slap against the bathroom door, hit hard enough that the push broom fell right off my cleaning cart and clacked against the tile floor. You would have thought a grenade had gone off from the way I jumped. The little sheets of paper slipped from my palm and floated to that sticky toilet floor. "Oh, Cheryl," I shouted. "Don't give me that," she yelled back. I walked out of the stall to my cleaning cart, lifted the broom, and pulled the cart aside. Didn't even have time to open the door for Cheryl. She just pushed at it any damn way. I flicked the ceiling lights off like a kid who thinks the darkness will hide them. I'm going to tell you something nice about my boss, Cheryl McGee. She could be sweet as baby's feet as long as she didn't think you were taking advantage. When I first moved to Utica, she and her son took me out to Chicken Riggers. It was a date, but I pretended not to know. The stink of failure had followed my relationship for years, and I preferred keeping this job than trying for love again. Now she stood at the bathroom door trying to peek around me. A slim little redhead who'd grown her hair down to her waist and wore open-toed sandals in all but the worst of winter. "Someone's in there?" she asked, looked up at the darkened lights. "Me," I said. She pointed her chin down, but her eyes up at me. She thought she looked like a mastermind dominating with her glare, but I'd been shot at before. Once I was thrown down a flight of stairs. "I mean, is there anyone in there that I can't fire?" Oop, I lifted the broom and shook it. I was just sweeping," I said. Cheryl nodded back and stepped back 2 paces. "I don't mind breaks, Ricky, you know that." She took out her cell phone and flipped it open, looked at the face. "But I need the station looking crisp first thing in the morning." "I'll be done in a minute," I said. Cheryl nodded, reached back, and swept her hand through her waist-length hair. The gesture didn't look like flirtation, just hard work. "Hey, what'd that letter say?" I looked back into the bathroom. "Don't know yet." She nodded and squeezed her lips together. "Well, I'd love to know," she said, and smiled weakly. "Me too," I told her, not unkindly. Then, of all things, she gave me a limp salute with her right hand. After that, she turned in her puffy gray boots and walked out toward the ticket booth. The bathroom's windows were a row of small frosted glass rectangles right near the ceiling. They let light in, but it turned green and murky. Now, as I crept back to the second toilet stall, I imagined I was walking underwater and felt queasy. I opened the door to find the right piece of paper. I opened the door to find the first piece of paper right where I dropped it, and I recognized it immediately. A bus ticket. I bent to the knees and braced one hand against the wall for balance. My right leg ached something awful. I even let out an old man's groan as I crouched. Ugh. But that kind of ache was nothing new. I'd felt 40 ever since I was 15. I held the ticket at an angle so I could read it in the hazy light. One way from Union Station to Burlington, Vermont. An 11 or 12-hour trip if you figured all the train stops between here and there. The date on the ticket read Thursday, the 21st of January. Just 3 days off. The name of the company on the top was Greyhound. I worked for Trailways. It sounds silly, but the logo made the ticket feel like contraband. I leaned back out of the stall and peeked at the bathroom door to make sure I was still alone. I checked the back of the ticket for something, a note, an explanation. Nothing. Then I remembered that I'd seen 2 silhouettes through the envelope. I ducked my head to the left, looking to the floor of the sanitary first stall, but it hadn't landed there. Then I looked to my right and saw that little cream-colored sheet, not much bigger than a Post-it, flat on the floor of filthy old stall number 3. Let me be more precise. Flat on the floor in a gray puddle in filthy old stall number 3. Forget it. Better to leave it behind than dip fingers in the muck on that floor. Even wearing gloves didn't seem like enough protection. Maybe a hazmat suit. Leave it there. Make peace with a little mystery. I stood and rubbed my bad knee, even turned to leave, but you know that old saying about curiosity. Curiosity is a bastard. I opened the door of stall number 3 and tried not to look at the bowl itself, or at all that had smeared and splashed along the seat in the back wall. I opened my mouth to breathe, but the faint whiff of filth, like a corrupted soul, haunted me. It made my eyes tear up. Even my ears seemed to ring. I bet I looked like a nerve gas victim. So I used the toe of my boot to tug the sheet of paper toward me, but it wouldn't move. I had to use my hand. I lurched my middle finger forward even as I pulled my head back and touched the corner of that little soaked sheet. I flicked at it, but the damn thing barely shifted. I had no choice. I picked the paper up right out of the muck. The gray liquid didn't even run down my fingers, it just clung like jelly to the tips. It was cold and lumpy. My skin went numb. The wet paper lay flat in my palm. I peeled it off with my left hand and held it to the greenish light of the windows. Ricky Rice? Oh, Cheryl. Enough of that. You get out here. I would, but not yet. I stopped out of the stall and rose on my toes, getting the soaked sheet as close to the windows as possible. I could see black ink on the paper, make out some of the same handwriting that had scribbled my name on the outside of that envelope. I mean it, Ricky. Cheryl pushed and strained at the door, and the wheels of my cleaning cart squeaked as they rolled. I blew on the paper to dry it. The cursive was small but neat, legible. The wooden door swung open. I heard its steel handle clang against the stone wall. I paid no more attention to Cheryl because now I could read the two lines of the note. You made a promise in Cedar Rapids in 2002. Time to honor it. Without thinking, purely automatic, I walked back into that filthy toilet stall and flushed the note away, but not the ticket. Kitty Foxy says, don't pick it up, Ricky Rice. I feel you. Don't pick it up, Ricky Rice. 3 days I thought about that note, thought about it, repeated it in my mind, tried to forget it. But on the third day, I showed up at my job with a packed duffel bag, which I stored in my locker, my mind not yet made up. Cheryl kept to herself that morning, which was for the best. If she'd chatted with me like usual, I might have admitted what I was considering, and she'd have convinced me to stay. It was stupid to do otherwise in 2005. Lots of people were already losing jobs down here in the lower sector. The rest of the country hadn't been sucker punched yet. The bad news hadn't trickled up yet, but it would. Cheryl would have pointed all this out, and I would have agreed, ripped up the ticket, and taken my duffel bag home at the end of the shift. But I wanted to make up my own mind about this, so my cleaning took on a meditative silence. The only sounds I heard as I wiped down her computer screen were the growling winds outside her office window. The outdoor crew worked on the other side of the glass, shoveling in the storm. I knew the guys who were doing it, and I sympathized. The snow had been up to my shins when I came in at 8, and it hadn't let up for an hour. I washed windows, emptied trash, dust mopped, and wet mopped the trailways area, and all the while I wondered what to do when the clock struck noon. The bus wasn't actually leaving till 12:25, but where's the poetry in that? By 11, I'd done as much in 3 hours as I would have stretched to 8 on a normal day. If I did split on that bus, at least Cheryl couldn't say that I'd left her with a messy station. But where was I going? Burlington, Vermont? What kind of black man accepts an unsigned invitation to the whitest state there is? There'd been that sting on television where police told deadbeat dads they won the lottery and arrested the guys when they showed up to collect. Maybe that's what this ticket was about. I wasn't a father to anyone, but I'd sure made some bad plays in my life. I wonder if I had any open warrants floating around. Or could something good be waiting there for me? Before I could go into the bathroom and wipe down the counters for the 10th time, one of the guys from the grounds crew, a bald guy with a face like a turtle, asked me to go drop salt on the sidewalks. I might have argued with him if his skin hadn't been blue. I went out into the bright white cold with a 10-pound bag. I tossed the salt, and when there wasn't enough, I grabbed another bag. I didn't bother with my gloves, and pretty soon my hands dried out. Digging in the salt made my fingertips bleed. It only took about 15 minutes to do one side of the station. Then I moved out back to the parking spaces, but when I looked back at the building, it had disappeared. The snow came down like a shroud, and I couldn't see some of the cars behind me, and I stood alone in the storm. You made a promise in Cedar Rapids in 2002. Time to honor it. How did they know? Wind got into the hood of my parka and raked across my face, so I shut my eyes and moved with one hand out in front of me. I was so lost I might have been walking down the middle of the train tracks and wouldn't have known until the locomotive stomped me. And who were they? Then my fingers felt a hard surface, and before I could slow down, I walked into it, face first into the brick wall of Union Station. The doors I'd come through stood only 5 feet to my left. When I walked back into the station, I felt embarrassed, like everyone had seen me bash my face, and I went straight for the bathroom. I passed the ground crews drinking coffee on the long benches, and their slurps sounded like snickering. The station seemed unfamiliar and slightly hostile now. For a moment, I wondered if I was in the wrong place. That damn bathroom snapped me back to reality. I just cleaned the place at 10:45, and an hour later it was vile. Someone had dumped handfuls of paper towel into one sink, and then the wet mess turned it into mush. Why? What the hell joy did that bring? There's a specific kind of guy who does this gutless vandalism, either in sinks or toilet bowls. I always imagine he's got a weak chin and a crooked spine. The floors were murky with slush, so I mopped. I cleared the paper towel mush from the sink and checked the stalls. When I reached stall 3, I opened the door slowly, afraid to find someone had snuck in through the window and vomited across the tiles. Thankfully, no. But someone had added new graffiti. 2 sentences, scratched into the paint with a blue pen. Suck a dick rub. Butt sex happened here. As I got on that 12:25 p.m. Greyhound bus, I felt absolutely no regrets. Chapter 3. Latricia Ransom says, a face like Moscow Mitch. Yeah, that's exactly the face I was thinking. Legit, that's exactly the face that I was thinking. As I got on the 12:25 p.m. Greyhound bus, I felt absolutely no regrets. Chapter 3. No regrets until about 15 minutes into the ride. We left on time, which was a surprise in the middle of a snowstorm, but the driver didn't seem like a time waster. Not the friendliest dude you ever met. He snatched tickets from people's hands as they boarded. But better that kind than the one who'd laze around the station chatting with the other drivers. Soon as he pulled out the station, the driver became our concentrated captain, his entire focus on the snowy terrain. We weren't a full busload, maybe 3/4. I had a small Hispanic woman next to me. Me, the aisle, she, the window. She'd fallen asleep before the driver started the engine, and I wondered what she might be escaping or what mystery she might be moving toward. I became so curious I felt like shaking her awake and asking, because of the insanity of my own choice, became clearer with each block we left behind. I watched the streets I'd crossed every morning on my way to the station, Railroad Street, Broad Street, North Janice, and felt as though I were saying goodbye to 3 of my coworkers. And that's when I really understood. I quit my job. I quit my job. I was screaming inside my skull. I quit my job. I am 40 years old and I just quit my job. What the hell was I thinking? I grabbed the armrest and squeezed them so hard the plastic should have cracked. I just felt so damn scared. But it had only been a few minutes. We weren't even on the highway yet, though I could see the on-ramp in the distance. Flurries of snow slapped against the windshield and the driver turned the wipers on just as he approached a red light. The driver stopped at the crossroads and I shook in my seat. Just get out now and go back. Cheryl won't even have noticed. Tell her you left for lunch. But then the bus moved again. We reached the on-ramp, but even now there was still time. The bus skulked at the top of the ramp as the driver waited to merge. The snow came down so thick it could have hidden an 18-wheeler. So I had one last chance to escape. I could holler to be let off, go back to the safety of my regular paycheck. I found myself on my feet before realizing I'd even moved. I grabbed the headrest of the empty seat in front of me, stepped one foot into the aisle, but a voice shouted out behind me, "Negro, sit down!" Who else could the voice be talking to? There were other Negroes on the bus, if you want to use that term, but none were on their feet. And do you know the craziest part? The most shameful part? I listened. I sat down. As soon as I did, I became angry at myself, really, and turned around to snap at the speaker, but lost my voice when I saw the Negro who'd done the shouting. I refused to say African American. It just takes too damn long. "Sit down and hear some truth," the man said, squinting in my direction. This guy. He was 3/4 bum and unfortunately 1/4 legal ticket holder. He stepped into the aisle, grabbing the headrest on either side of him for balance. We are at war, you people. America is in a fight. And with that, 37 passengers groaned as one. Those of us who were awake looked toward the front of the bus at the driver for help. But the driver had abandoned us. He leaned forward in his seat and held the steering wheel even tighter, as if to say, "Can't you see how hard I'm working? I'm not talking about Iraq. I'm talking about the battle here, on our soil, in our souls." We were on our own, just us. Once this became clear, the hobo paced the aisle. When he passed me, I got to see him better. He stooped when he walked, even though he was clearly younger than me. A slim body but a puffy face, the blown-out nose of a lifetime drinker. I bet you could get tipsy licking the sweat on his forehead. I'm sorry to say this, but the man looked like a goblin. "What kind of fight am I talking about?" he continued. "I'm talking about faith, people. Faith and belief." Oh no, one of those. I would have liked it better if he just panhandled. Give him a few dollars and he'd be satisfied. But the religious types required a different reward. Dealing with such folks goes in recognizable stages. First, you appeal to authority, but the driver had refused us. So next, you try to ignore. Most of the passengers slipped into an imitation of sleep. It was our best defense. Row after row, eyes closed and arms crossed. Some even faked loud snoring. "Y'all think you can ignore me, but you're proving my point. Our nation is at war, but we're fighting in our sleep. How do you know whose side you on if your eyes are shut?" "I wish my ears was shut," a man shouted from the front. The last stage in such situations is when folks just lose their patience. "Who said it?" the bum asked, stamping forward. "I'm at war with your big mouth," another passenger, a boy, shouted from the back. The bum stalked the aisle now, looking for one set of open eyes. I saw him through the cracks in mine. As he bopped down the aisle, he became more aggressive. He never hit anyone, but bumped every chair in the row, throwing his 150 pounds like a round of haymakers. "To be an American is to be a believer," he shouted. "But y'all don't even understand what you believe in." Now the brakes on the bus huffed and groaned. We were on the highway, but hadn't traveled too far. The driver brought us to a full stop on the shoulder, then got out of his seat. That woke us up. Even the loudmouth got quiet. The Hispanic lady next to me craned her neck so she could see over the seat, then looked back at the bum with a smirk. She'd heard everything. The driver pushed a button on the dashboard, which opened the bus door. Wind rushed in like water floods a sinking ship. People snatched their coats on. Snowflakes shot into the cabin, a blast of confetti that melted on the floor. The driver clumped down the few steps and walked outside. Maybe he wasn't responding to the bum at all. Did we have a flat? Next came the squawk of grinding metal. The driver had opened one of the luggage bays. Now many of the passengers got out of their seats, even one old woman whose snore had been louder than the bus engine. I thought for sure she was asleep, but she stopped in the middle of a snort and got up to take a peek. Even the nut leaned over an empty seat to take a gander. The old woman smiled at him. "I believe you're getting kicked off." "It don't matter," he said. He sneered to seem defiant, but already his voice had weakened. It looked cold out there. The bus driver disappeared inside the luggage bay. Only one foot stuck out, and it kicked around as he searched, as if the bus was devouring him. Then a brown suitcase flew out onto the shoulder like a bit of indigestible beef. At that, the passengers applauded. Me too, I must admit. The driver shut the bay door, another grinding squawk, then made his way back inside. The bum dragged himself toward the front right away. I thought he might protest the excommunication, but there was nowhere to appeal. On this bus, the passengers were all archbishops, and the bus driver was our pope. The guy spoke as he moved. "Who gets God? That's all I'm asking. Who gets welcome to the table?" Just get off, a raspy woman growled from the rear. The driver climbed the 3 steps into the bus and stood there saying nothing. The snowstorm outside was so white, so bright against the windshield, that it turned the driver into a dark blue silhouette, a silent shadow pointing toward the exit. The bum stopped before he reached the driver. His knees dipped even though we weren't moving, and he grabbed at the luggage racks for balance. He sighed deeply, a little theatrically, as he turned back to survey us. His eyes were as yellow as masking tape. Human beings are no damn good, he said. We're even worse than the animals. We like. He trailed off, cleared his throat, but his voice hardly reached a whisper. We like monsters, he said. Then he stepped off the bus. Our driver pressed a button on his console and the door shut with a low hiss. Outside, the guy lumbered over to his suitcase and righted it, then buttoned his coat. He don't even have a hat, the Hispanic woman next to me said. The bus idled there, as if the machine were making up its mind too. The bum walked anyway, back in the direction of the on-ramp. On a clear day, he'd have been in Utica in 20 minutes, but it might take an hour to get there in the snow. That old woman, the one who'd faked a good snore, got up from her seat and walked down the aisle. She bent forward and spoke into the driver's ear. The driver looked at her, then looked away, into his side mirror. Then he pressed the silver button and opened the door. The old woman hopped down each step and went outside. The bum hadn't even walked the length of the bus yet. She reached him and slapped at his arm. When he turned, she gave him her scarf, a purple puffy snake, and took the matching knit hat right off her head. Then she returned to the bus. But I guess the guy felt underwhelmed by the gesture. Maybe he thought she'd invite him back in. I thought she might have too. I wouldn't have been happy about it, but I would have understood. Instead, all he got was some accessories. So the guy looked up at the bus, squeezed the knit hat and scarf into a ball, and threw both right over the side of the highway. He looked at us and refused to move, even as the blizzard nearly tore the buttons off his coat. A showdown, a staring contest, one we lost. After the old woman got back to her seat, the bus driver hit his button and shut the door. He put the bus in gear and we moved. In all this drama, I'd forgotten that this was my last chance to get back too, and I returned to my seat. The shabby man remained, scowling from the shoulder. For all I know, he died right there. And thus endeth the passage. Now, we actually have a little bit more of the story, but I wanted to pause there and kind of give you guys a chance to give me some feedback and let me know what you're thinking. We've actually got quite a bit more that we could read, and we've got more time, but I didn't really hear a lot from you guys. I was kind of looking up at the screen. So let's consider this a break. And then maybe we can read a little bit more, but that just felt like a good and natural stopping point. So far, we've met Ricky Rice, and the section title, We Like Monsters, now has a little bit more context and a little bit meaning. At first, I thought it was saying we enjoy monsters, but it was saying we are like monsters. What are some of your thoughts? You've had a chance to hear it. You've had a chance to absorb a little bit of the story. Give me some feedback, and then we'll decide what the direction is after that. I'm gonna look and see if there's any other comments. I see Latricia has a little bit of an issue with sweet as baby's feet. I actually really like that line because when newborn babies, I've watched parents do some real foolishment with newborn, put the feet in their mouth and all that. Oh, they did it. And I'm like, it's still feet. It's still feet. So, but I actually kind of like that line. I might find myself using that in speech. Um, Tanya Horton says, "All my friends are heathens. Take it slow." Is that is that from something? Was that in the story? Because I didn't feel like I caught that. Um, but it's all good. Let's see. Alicia Evans says that I am absolutely love it so far, absolutely enthralled. And then she says, I think I'm gonna have to get this book. That's fantastic. Um, I hope you do. Matter of fact, moderators, why don't we go ahead and post that link? You know, we always like to support local bookstores, black bookstores, especially local bookstores. So we're going to post up a link at some point soon so that you'll be able to find a place to support. Don't just run, get it off Amazon. Let's, Jeff Bezos, he got plenty of wealth. So we've got some to spread and share. We typically like to go to Harriet's first. Loyalty Bookstore is another one of our partners that we like to support. And there's a few other. We've got Baldwin and Company in Louisiana that we enjoy supporting. And then there's another one in Oakland that I can't quite remember. But look, hey, my peoples is always here. You can find Victor Lavalle's Big Machine at Harriet's Bookshop at the link that's right here. So for those of you all who are following us on Facebook, you can go on and click that link and get that book. If you're following us on YouTube, go on and write it down, or you know where to search. Just go to bookshop.org/books and look for Harriet's books, and you'll be able to find it there. All right. So I've heard from Alicia. I've heard from Alicia Evans. Who else is feeling this story? Give me some indicator what y'all thinking. Saniqua says that his shame about reacting to Negro is kind of poignant to me. Um, Latricia reminds me that it's Marcus Books in Oakland. Thank you so much. Yes, 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 yes. Marcus Books. Thank you. But back to what Sanika was saying. Yeah, that kind of landed with me too. And it wasn't just his shame at responding to Negro. I feel like it was his shame at letting somebody that he didn't know tell him what to do, and to do so in this kind of antiquated, anachronistic, and borderline slur of a term. I always wrestle with Negro. Like, Negro is one of those things that I don't mind saying, but I don't think I want nobody saying it to me. Like, I might even have an eyebrow flex if a black person says it to me. So I wrestle with it. Hang on a second. I don't like drinking on camera. I'm gonna take me a little sip of something. And yes, I'm gonna cover the screen. And I don't care about you mocking me about it. And we're back. All right, I'm not hearing any other thoughts. I'm not going to front. I'm actually really into this, so I want to feel out the rest of this. And since we've got more time, I'm going to go ahead and read through some more. Homie Lou says she's enjoying it, or Lou Homie says she's enjoying it too. Um so let's go ahead and get into it. We'll read a little bit more before we take our break for the night. Chapter 4. You don't just brush off an episode like that. In fact, you may feel pretty terrible about it for a good long while. When I went to use the bathroom on the bus, I walked with my eyes at the floorboards. Everyone moved through the bus that way. The only relief came when we reached a new station and some passengers disembarked. They ran off the bus so fast they nearly tripped one another, and those left behind changed seats a few times, as if our chairs caused the pain. Albany, Worcester, Newton, Boston, Hanover, White River Junction, Montpelier, and finally Burlington. A 12-hour trip that took 16 with snow delays. I didn't recognize anyone else by the end. Even the driver was different. I can't say I felt less guilty, but there was no one left to remind me of my shame. This wasn't a resolution, but it was a relief. When we arrived at the Vermont. When we arrived at the Vermont Transit bus station in Burlington, I recognized the place. Not that I had been there before, but places like it. This wasn't Utica with its marble columns and historic landmark status, more similar to the stations in Kingston, Elmira, and Troy, by which I mean sleazy, greasy, and small. Sleazy is a little harsh. The Burlington station was just a forest green one-story, not much bigger than the private homes across the street. The bus pulled in, only a handful of us on board. I saw 2 cars parked in the lot, but the snow had piled so high there might have been more buried. I should have arrived at a little past midnight. Instead, it was 4 in the morning. When I stepped off the bus, it didn't seem as if the sun would ever rise, the sky frozen in blackness. I wondered who, if anyone, would still be there to meet me. On the last mile of my trip, I envisioned my arrival. I imagined balloons and streamers, or cops with guns. I only found a quiet station where a couple of white people waited to meet a couple of other white people. That's it. And I was one black guy standing by the snack machines in a daze. But I didn't want candy. I wanted a hit, a hit, a hit, a hit. Can't be scared when you're sedated. I leaned against the snack machine, pressed the clear plastic buttons helplessly. Ricky Rice? I heard a man's voice, but when I turned around, all I saw was his belt buckle. Had to lean back, really curl my spine to see the eyes far above mine. Talk about a titan. Maybe my confusion added a few inches, but not many. This white man stood about 7 feet tall and just as wide. His mother must have been a polar bear. Are you Ricky Rice? He asked again. He was prepared for winter. Brown Carhartt jacket and matching snow pants, logger boots and padded gloves. Even his face came covered with a graying beard that flowed down to his collarbone. I'll bet you could sleep in a snowdrift when you're outfitted like that. Me, I had on a pea coat and a skull cap. I'm Ricky, I admitted. I kept my back against the snack machine for balance. Now he stooped so we could look at each other directly. I hadn't felt this small since I was a child. Was he my escort or was I his meal? I gripped my duffel bag tighter so I could use it as a weapon. Treat this like a shark attack and bop him in the nose if I had to. He said, My name's Lake. I have orders to drive you north. Chapter 5. We climbed inside his enormous silver pickup. Warmth filled the cabin when Lake started the engine. Heat blew through the vents so hard it sounded like rushing water. Lake put both hands on the wheel. His Gore-Tex gloves swished against the cold plastic. We pulled out of the station. Lake puckered his lips and jutted his chin, and I watched him. We're on Pine Street now, he said, and we're headed to Wilston Road. From there, we take the interstate about an hour, in case you're wondering. I realized I was carrying my bag in my lap like a child, a vision that made me feel vulnerable. So I dropped the duffel between my knees. Lake inhaled deeply. His chest was so thick that the brassy buttons of his jacket brushed the horn. He exhaled and yawned, licking his lips. From this angle, the hair surrounding his face looked like a mane. I said, How did you know about Cedar Rapids? Iowa? He asked. Come on, boss. Lake stared into his rearview mirror as another truck rolled up behind us. It practically chomped on our bumper, but Lake didn't accelerate. He drove steady. Mr. Rice, how many bosses pick people up from bus stations at 4 a.m.? He had me there. I jammed my foot into my duffel bag on the floor of the cab, digging into its side. So you don't know anything about Cedar Rapids? I asked. Lake said, I know they make a lot of cereal there. I leaned back, rested my face against the cool window. I'd slept on that bus, but not well. It had been like napping inside a steamer trunk. Lake's truck felt more like a sleeper cabin, so I slipped into a quiet stupor, and in this way I watched us get on the highway. Lake stayed as good as his word, 1 hour on the interstate. Then I figured we were there, but I was wrong. We had another half hour on Vermont's back roads. They weren't paved streets, just snow on top of ice and ice on top of mud, a 3-layer cake. Must have been 5:30 by the time we reached those roads, but the sun hadn't crept up an inch. The sky remained blue-black, and in places the stars hid behind cloud cover. Snow stopped falling, but the wind continued, blowing so berserk that the top of every tree shuddered. Despite my weariness, I got scared again, or maybe because of it. It's one thing to get in the car with some burly mountain man when you're still in the city, but when he gets you out into the country, well, there's too many tales about this going badly for a guy like me, and I couldn't help but ponder the possibilities. Dragged to my death, hung from a tree, kept prisoner in a shed for days. So the nervousness charged me up again, though Lake hardly seemed to notice. How could he? He was too busy driving. His pickup was the kind you see in television commercials where they hitch a blue whale to the back of the truck and the truck hauls that Magilla up a hill. But even this truck had trouble on these roads. The ruts were so deep that Lake weaved from one side of the road to the other. We weren't driving at this point, just surfing. I bet we would have flipped over if it wasn't for the surrounding forest, which stopped the wind from smacking us directly. Then my anxiety spilled over. I pulled at the handle of my door instinctively. Lucky for me, the damn thing stayed locked. "What are you doing?" Lake said, though he didn't look away from the road. "I don't know who you are," I shouted. "You're taking me out here for some wild shit. Admit it." "Calm down, Mr. Rice. Cut out all this Mr. business. I'm from New York. You don't want to mess with me." Lake tapped the gas with his foot and the truck bucked forward, moving with all the grace of a horny bull. Outside, the trees sobbed and groaned. Some bent so far I thought they would snap, and in fact, some had. I could see them deeper in the forest wherever the moonlight grasped through the cover. Trees that had crashed from the wind or the weight of the snow and landed at painful angles. "I'm a black man, you hear me? We don't play. I will knock your ass out. Pull over, motherfucker. Pull over." Lake ignored me. I wondered if I sounded tough or terrified. I felt both. I worked at my door handle again, reached down for my duffel bag so I could break the window open. I'm not saying that was a good idea, just my only one. Before I could get the bag into my hands, there was an astounding scream. Wailing carried on the wind as a 30-foot tree snapped and fell across the road. It landed just ahead of us, so close that its limbs raked the hood. Bark sprayed the windshield, hard enough to cause a crack. The front of the truck bucked, the wheels lifting from the road. That tree probably weighed more than Lake's pickup. We could only gasp and stare. As we idled, the strong lamps of the truck illuminated the midsection of the tree, and from this close it looked unrecognizable, monstrous. The needles on its limbs became poisoned quills, and its bark an invulnerable hide. What lived out there, hidden in the dark? I recovered and looked at Lake triumphantly, as if I had orchestrated this. "I told you not to fuck with me. It's bad luck." Lake looked across the seat. His eyes were so red. It was the first moment I considered he must have sat in this truck for hours because of all my snow delays. But I didn't sympathize. Not just then. I scrunched my mouth into a satisfied smile and said, "What you gonna do?" Step outside, apparently. Lake left the truck, slammed his door, then went to the back. Heard him fussing around, but I didn't pay too much attention because the man had left the keys in the ignition like a fool. I slid toward the driver's side slowly. Then, this big bastard stalked right past the window, didn't even look in at me. I was halfway across the bench when he did this, but he stopped moving. He carried a hatchet, two wood blocks, and a length of heavy chain wrapped around his right shoulder. He walked to the tree. It was the first thing that made him look small. Nature asserting its own scale. And this wasn't even that big a tree. Not a redwood, just a black spruce. Lake slapped the bark the way you affectionately slap a dog on its side. Then he got down on a knee and placed one woodblock against the tree, got up, lifted the hatchet, and used the blunt end to knock the woodblock under the tree like a shim. He did this again about a yard lower. Then he slid the length of chain under the tree and ran it all the way around. This was my last chance. He'd attach the chain to the truck, then reverse till he nudged it far enough for the truck to get past. Then we'd be back on our journey to my demise. So I slid the rest of the way until I got behind the steering wheel. All set to put the truck in reverse, but my feet couldn't touch the pedals. This guy had this guy had his seat back far. So I was looking for the button or the bar, whatever that damn truck used, when I saw Lake climb over the tree and drop down on the far side. Now I could only see the upper third of him. You could have mistaken the man for a Bigfoot at this angle, a beast of the wild. He didn't attach the chain to the truck. He wrapped it around himself. Then he stepped back a few feet. From the motion, I could tell he was kicking at the ground, digging in. Then he pulled. This white man is insane. That's what I thought. Boy, he was straining, enough to make my shoulders hurt. Lake's mouth snapped open and he made this sound like a long, low rumble. If I hadn't been looking at him, I would have checked for storm clouds. He kept pulling. leaning backward, screaming with effort, until, yes, that tree shook. Just slightly, hardly anything, a quiver. It resisted, but Lake would not relent. The spruce scraped toward Lake now, an inch or two this time. The limbs on his side snapped in sharp protest. The big man kept shouting, and rather than drive off, I rolled the window down. I stuck my head out. I kept blinking, wiping the snow from my eyelids. In the heat of astonishment, I didn't even feel the cold. That's some old mountain man trick, I thought. Maybe the road was at more of a slant than I knew. Plus, he'd used wood blocks. I tried to come up with an explanation, anything to feel less awestruck. But I was really only thinking one thing. This bastard moved a tree. Lake stepped farther back and finished. When the tree had been moved enough, just enough for us to get by, Lake stopped pulling and leaned against it, severely winded. He heaved so hard his face touched the bark. He looked like he was in mourning. After gathering his things and dropping them in the truck bed, he got back inside the cabin. I'd pushed his seat all the way back again and taken my place by the passenger window. I didn't look at him, only the body by the side of the road. But Lake didn't start driving, so I finally turned, to find him staring at me, a challenge in that tight set of his lips. I said, "Well, if we're going to get there, let's just get there." Lake nodded and drove deeper into the hushed woods. I'm sorry. I'm laughing at how dude's whole vibe changed. How he was like, "You're not going to take me and kill me," to, "Well, off we go to my murder." But, all right. We've got just a little bit more time, so I'm going to read this last section. I'm going to read this last section because it's short, and then we'll talk a little bit. But yeah, Angel got it. His tune changed quick. All right. Chapter 6. Wake up, Mr. Rice. What had I been dreaming of? I had a picture of my older sister Daphne in my mind from when we were children. She protected me when I was still too young to handle myself. I suppose that's why I'd been dreaming of her, because I wasn't so sure I could handle myself now. Would have been nice to ring her up, but she stayed all the way out in Long Island, and I doubt my prepaid track phone could reach that far. "We're here, Ricky." Lake had already parked. He stepped out of the truck, came around to my side, and grabbed the handle, but it was locked. He fussed with the handle for another moment before he realized, and I just watched him in a kind of daze. Then he leaned close to the glass, his enormous face filling the window, the hair of his beard flattened like a sample on the slide. "Please open up," he said quietly. "I'm tired, and I want to go to bed." He let go of the door and waited for me to do it myself. I opened the door and got out. We were in front of a small wooden cabin, as dark inside as the sky above. I couldn't even make out the full dimensions, only the outline against the snow behind it. Lake pointed at it. "This is yours, Ricky." "I own it?" "Sure," he said. "And why don't we give you a jet plane, too?" Wind blew over the pickup truck, over the cabin, over Lake and me. Lake rubbed his face with one gloved hand. "This is yours as long as you decide to stay." "And what if I want to leave tomorrow?" "Then we won't monogram your doormat." "There's a doormat?" "It's a house, isn't it?" And not the only one either. There were there were few more lined up near mine. 6 cabins, maybe more, in a cul-de-sac. A half circle of homes. Most were dark, but one had lights on. "Most of the others are sleeping," Lake said. The idea that there were other people filled me with both relief and sorrow. Nice to know I wasn't being thrown into an isolation tank, but maybe they've been invited here just like me. Mysterious note, one-way ticket. Maybe I wasn't going to be singled out. This was the part that brought a little sorrow. How embarrassing. To be a grown man who still wishes the world would tell him he's special. Ouch, at me next time. "What is this place, Lake?" "We're in a part of Vermont called the Northeast Kingdom." I waved at the cabins. I mean all this. Who invited me here? Who do you work for?" Lake turned to the pickup while I took a step toward my cabin. "Mine." Imagine that. I still couldn't. I'd been living in this one room efficiency, sharing a bathroom with four sour men. I expected the cabin to disappear as soon as I touched the door handle. An illusion, a trick, a game. Can you guess that I'm a bit of a skeptic? Doubt has a long history with me. Lake returned with my duffel bag, hanging from his index finger. It looked as small as a fanny pack. This is the Washburn Library. I reached the steps that led up to my cabin, just a few. I touched the wooden door. A brass number hung on the front. 9. This is a library? Lake set the bag down at my feet, went into his coat pocket, and gave me a set of keys. He got into the truck, started it, rolled down his window. All this while, I looked at the keys in my cold hand. Lake shouted over the wind, "Turn around!" He drove away, clearing my view. There was the Washburn Library, an enormous building, one long, flat slab of sandstone set down in some of the most inhospitable sod America has to offer. It looked as long as a football field, but because of the snow, the low building was nearly buried. Maybe that's why I hadn't seen it right away. Maybe I hadn't been prepared or willing. Now I saw it. The interior lights smoldered, and the library glowed bleakly in the great woods. It looked like God's gravestone. It's 11:05, so I'm gonna go ahead and stop right there. There's still a little bit more to read, but I think that you guys have gotten a good taste. I was really earlier. I was gonna stop when they put the man off the bus, and we kind of got a sense of we like monsters, but I can't front. The story just kind of pulled me in. Let me know some of your thoughts about it. Again, it's I felt like it looked like God's gravestone was like a good line to stop on. I see the Angel Monique pulled that line. It looked like God's gravestone. So I was like, yeah, I feel like that's a good place to stop. Um, Alicia Evans is not pleased that I'm ending the story there. But let me hear some more of y'all's thoughts. Again, this is Victor Lavalle, and I gotta say, there was a certain style and rhythm to the language in Slapboxing with Jesus and the stories that we read there that is very, very different. Now, in prepping for the show, I like to do like a little bit of a gloss over. So I'll read like a few lines or I'll skim through. When I know that a piece is likely to be challenging or difficult for the audience, I'll do like a 3 to 5 page test where I will read the first 3 to 5 pages. That's what I did with the Finkelstein Five when we were going to read Nana Kwame Adjibrenya's, when we were reading from Nana Kwame Adjibrenya's Friday Black, because I was already pre-warned that the Finkelstein Five could be trauma causing, but that it was a brilliant story. So I read the first 5 pages of it. And then based on the strength of that, I was like, bust it. We're going to go ahead and go with it. So in reading, in prepping for tonight's show, I had been pulling from a bunch of his different works. And there were, he's got a lot of different pieces. There's Black Tom, which is sort of a horror noir. I feel like that's kind of like set in Sherlock Holmesy time. There's another one that I was actually really, really into. I was excited about it, but the pacing didn't feel quite right for this show. Um, and that one is about a guy who's kicked out of college. He weighs 315 pounds when he's kicked out of college, and he goes to move in with his very violent, very volatile family. And when I say volatile, I mean they literally might combust, like blow up, catch fire. When I say volatile, that's what I mean. And that's not even the half of the story. Like it gets deeper and stranger from there. So I read a few pages from that. I read a few pages from his fairy tale slash fantasy story called The Changeling, but it didn't feel like it had the right tone for the show. And then I got to this one, and it just felt good. Like I liked Ricky Rice's vibe, his mode. He was just kind of chilling regular in the cut, and it just kind of had a good feel to it. So I said, you know what? I'm gonna take the gamble that this is the one. And I read like 2 pages, and the rest of it was all fresh, clean read. Like the way I normally do it. So with the concerns that I know some of you have expressed in the past, I was willing and excited to actually take the gamble on this story. And I see that Angel Monique says that Sir Victor has redeemed himself for me. Um, Saniqua got chills on that last line, that it looked like God's gravestone. I see a few of you all kind of got y'all like that, tough or terrified. And Saniqua says that that was a story in and of itself, and I have to agree. Um, there's there were a few lines in here that I felt like you could kind of go a little bit deeper into it. So for those of you all who are enthused or excited about this story, again, this is a story where a man ends up experiencing quite a few challenges of faith. Now, we haven't even gotten into Ricky Rice's history, surviving a suicide cult, and what that meant that he learned about faith. And we don't know yet, what promise did he make in 2002 that he has to redeem? And what are we going to find out? Like, it's 2005 now. So only 3 years have passed since the time he made this promise in 2002. And they here to collect, boy. And collecting, they putting him up in a cabin out in the woods. And who is Lake? And why can he pull a tree? What? What? Why? There's so so there's so much to know. Um, Kitty Foxy says, I need to know where Ricky Rice's journey is taking him. If you, like Kitty Fox, also need to know where Ricky Rice's journey is taking him, well, you can pick up a copy of Victor Lavalle's Big Machine at Harriet's Bookshop. You can go to www.bookshop.org/books. Go ahead and type in the title. Boom, boom, boom. There's a link right there. For those of you who are following on Facebook, you can click that link. For those of you all who are joining us through YouTube, write it down. Please try and support. Please try and support your local bookstore. Please try and support your local bookstore, daddy-o, buddy-o. Um, But please try and support your local bookstores, and please support Black bookstores. Here at Storytime with Julian, we center Black literature, we center Black experiences, we center Black voices, and we support Black authors and Black booksellers. That's what we do. So whenever we recommend a book, we are always going to give you a link to some independent Black bookstore. Sometimes that's easy to find, sometimes it's a little bit tougher, but it's worth it, right? It's worth that little bit of extra effort. Another little bit of housekeeping while I'm waiting to see some of your comments. Um, another piece of housekeeping to our winners of the copies of Just As I Am, Cicely Tyson, Just As I Am. Your copies will be going into the mail tomorrow. I was not able to get to the post office on yesterday, so they're going to go into the mail tomorrow. You'll get that. You'll get a couple of Storytime with Julian stickers and a card and maybe another little bit of swag. So be on the lookout for that. And again, shout out and congratulations to Angela Lee Rains and to Vanessa Vincent, our two winners of the copy of Just As I Am. So here's the deal. Here's what we're going to do now. Every time I buy a new physical book, I will buy a second copy. Every time I buy a new physical book, I buy a second copy. Whenever I crack a spine, there's going to be another clean, crisp copy ready to be given away. And when I do that, and when I give away that copy, I'm going to give it away to somebody on YouTube. Here's what has to happen. You have to like the page. You have to be subscribed. You have to comment. So when you see me crack open another fresh book, that's your chance to win. What, Julian, you might be asking yourself, is the next fresh book you're going to crack open? So glad you asked. I told you, well, actually, I'm not that glad you asked because I can't see past my own lights to read the title of it. And I thought that I had it beside me and I don't. Stay tuned on Tuesday. All right, we'll do it that way. On Tuesday, I'm going to be cracking open a new book. You'll probably see an announcement about it soon because we want to continue to support we want to support you all having a reading habit. One of the things that I love that has become one of the outgrowths of Storytime with Julian is that there's a lot of folk that's like, I hadn't read in a good grip. I hadn't really picked up a book in a grip. And ever since you started doing this, I found my love for reading again. Nothing could make me happier than that except one other thing, that you find your love for words again and you start writing. Because while it is so important and so phenomenal to share in the beauty and the joy of all these wonderful Black stories that have been created, you got one in you. You are a story. You got a story to tell, and I want you to write yours too. So, what I'm hoping happens is that as I read these different pieces and you start hearing all these different kind of voices, you'll hear something that affirms for you. Wait a minute, my voice sounds like that voice. There's something in that. My style could be here too. I could see me writing that. I could see me writing something like that. I want you to have that kind of experience, something that reaffirms for you as a listener that you are also a storyteller, because everybody who can hear my voice right now, that is a truth of you. You are indeed storytellers. So, I'm going to pull from a variety of different sources. I personally don't like horror, but if horror is your joint, yes, I'm going to read horror because I want you to be able to hear something that makes you think, you know what, I could tell a good horror story. I'm going to read biography pieces. I'm going to be reading all different kinds and all different voices. So stay tuned for that. But please, 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 um, follow us on social media. If you're not following us on Instagram, please do that. You can find us at Storytime Julian. Matter of fact, Instagram, Twitter, and Clubhouse, we are at Storytime Julian. Facebook, we are Storytime with Julian. YouTube, we are Storytime with Julian. Like all of them, subscribe to all of them. Tell your friends about all of them, because that's the way that we grow. That's the way that we develop. That's the way that we cultivate and expand our voice to help bring up more Black voices, because that's all I'm really about, is seeing more and more and more and varied Black lit. So excited about some of the authors. So here's what's up. Tuesday, I'm going to be reading two new excerpts from Stone. Iowan Tribal Stone Flowers. I'm going to be reading two new excerpts from her piece, Sigil Magic Now. I know a lot of y'all are all about Namira and Lath. Y'all are all about the lion and the panther and them talking and their magic. They're not in this section. Don't worry about it. You're not going to be disappointed. Why would I do that to you? It's Iowan. Y'all already know what she's capable of. Y'all already know the kind of writing that she does. So just come and make sure you're here for that, because that's happening Tuesday. So Tuesday, another excerpt from Sigil Masters by Iowan Tribal Stone. Nope. From Sigil Magic by Iowan Tribal Stone Flowers. Okay, you do not want to miss that. And soon after that, probably on Thursday, we're going to crack the spine on a brand new book from the founder, from the initiator of the sword and soul genre. And so there's going to be a little bit more, and there'll be another opportunity to get a new book. All right. So what else can I say to y'all? It is 11:16. We are at time. I'm looking for some of the comments. I see Saniqua encouraging me to be that book chiropractor and crack that spine. I see. Hold on. What is this? Alicia says that there is no way that she cannot get this book at this point. Well, all right. You know where to get it. You know where to get it. Let's see. About as hilarious as answering a question with Google it. I don't. I got lost on that one. Sometimes I forget. Kitty Foxy said, now every time I say support, I'm going to say support in my simple voice. By all means, please do. And tell your friends, Daddy O, that they need to come to story time with Julian. And there's no point in going to a story time if it ain't no Julian, because if it ain't no Julian, it ain't no story time. Anyway, y'all, that has been Story Time with Julian. Thank you so much for coming out. Thank you for your participation, for your comments, for your sharing. I look forward to seeing you guys on Tuesday. I hope you have a fantastic weekend. I hope your tomorrow is light and amazing. I hope you get some rest over the weekend. I hope you find some refreshment and something that brings you some joy. I hope if you're writing that you get some inspiration and that you're able to let that pen flow across that page and let those fingers click across those keys. And if you're reading, let me know what you're reading. Give me some notes. Let me know if there's some other books that you think I need to pick up, something else that you'd like to hear read. All right, because we're all about that too. I'm open to exploring new things, and I can't discover everything by myself. I know that some of y'all are prolific readers out there, so share with me some of your joys. One last thing before we go, you see the ticker down at the bottom. If you want to support Storytime with Julian, you can always hit up the Storytime with Julian Cash App. That is hashtag Storytime Julian. You can hit us up there. Also, if you want to support the Patreon, you can find us on Patreon at Vision 27. Vision 27 presents and Julian Long. So and I still, I have been lax with setting up the Patreon and making that effective, but that's something that I'm going to work on. But right now, I'm just really all about focusing as much as possible on this show and making Storytime with Julian everything that it should be. So if you support the Patreon, you are helping to support Storytime with Julian. You're helping us get books. You're helping us make better production. You're helping us to be able to, um, push out some blessings to some other folks while we're doing this thing. Stay tuned to in late February. I know we're just at the beginning of the month. There's going to be news about our spring book drive. I know some of you all were disappointed that we weren't able to do the 12 days of litmus, but we are going to be doing our spring book drive that's coming up real soon. If you have young people that you would like to be included, that you would like to have included as the list of recipients in the book drive, we're going to have some information available for you in a place where you can contact us for that next week. So we're going to complete that list. We are going to try and do up to 100 kids. I think currently we have about, is it 70, 57 or I don't know if it's 57 or 75, but we've got quite a few, but there are more coming. Anyway, I am rambling. You can certainly tip your Grio Cash App at hashtag Storytime Julian. Thank you, mods, for putting that up. And for everybody under the sound of my voice, have a wonderful Friday. Thanks for coming out. And we're going to be coming at you with our little closing screen. All right. Be peace.